Hey everybody. So in another week or so, the Toronto Real Estate Board is going to release their outlook for 2020. In a couple of weeks after that, we're going to have the full numbers for the month of April. So by that time, we're going to have a much clearer picture of how COVID-19 is affecting the market, and we'll have a better idea of how things might look going forward. In the meantime, I thought it would be a really good idea to go back and take a look at how the month of March was affected by COVID-19. So as a whole, March 2020 was actually a very strong month. Compared to March 2019, the average sale price was up, the number of sales was up, and the number of new listings was up. However, the majority of the activity that pushed those numbers happened in the first 2 weeks of March. So March 2020 is essentially two markets. There's the pre-COVID market, which was March 1st to March 14th, and then the post-COVID market, which would be March 15th to March 31st. So in the second half of the month, the majority of buyers put their search on hold, and the majority of sellers put their plans to list on hold. Now, there was still activity in the second half of the month, but the majority of that was made up by buyers who had already sold or had already given their landlord notice, so they were now in a position where they had to make a move, or sellers who had already purchased and they were now in a position where they had to list in order to facilitate that purchase. Overall though, as we'll see in the numbers here, there was a dramatic drop-off in activity in the second half of the month. Okay, let's look at the numbers. So the average sale price in the GTA for March was just over $900,000. Now that's a 14.5% increase compared to March 2019. So 14.5% is a significant increase. It's not quite as high as what we saw in February, where the increase was almost 17% year over year, but a high number nonetheless. Now, when we split the month in half, we see that the average sale price was actually higher in the first 2 weeks of the month and lower in the second 2 weeks. Still, even in the second 2 weeks post-COVID, average prices were 10.5% higher than they were in that same period in March 2019. So demand for housing was still strong enough relative to supply to see the average price remain well above last year's numbers. Now, something to keep in mind here, if you take a look at the numbers, that lower average that you see in the second half of the month is still higher than where we were in the fall and winter of 2019, and still higher than where we were in January 2020. Okay, so let's take a look at the number of sales. So the number of sales in the GTA was just over 8,000. Now that's up 12.3% compared to March 2019. When we split the month in half though, again, we see this number is higher in the first half, so 50% higher than the same period in March 2019, and then a big drop off in the second half of the month, 16% lower than the same period in 2019. So looking at the number of new listings, March 2020 was well over 14,000. So that's a 3% increase over March 2019. Now the number of sales in the first half of March was almost 33% higher than what we saw in the same period last year. In the second half of March, a big drop off, just over 18% lower than the same period last year. So as I said, once we have April 2020's numbers, we're going to have a better idea of sort of where we stand right now, where we are going forward. So yeah, until then, I hope you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and stay home. We'll see you on the next video.